most eminent members of today's panel discussion. Thank you for accepting our humble invitation coming to this panel where we are going to be discussing systemic changes to make our environment corporate and otherwise more inclusive. Not just coming up with recommendations, but further next steps. We believe, and I speak on behalf of G100, Media Arts and Communication India Country Club as the chair, and with my associates who are here with me today, we believe that this discussion will be the first of many that will probably become a white paper someday that will actually make policy changes in this regard. Without much ado, it is my pleasure to give it over to Daivata Chavan Patil, our Director of Strategy and Research. Daivata, over to you. Please take it from here.
Thank you, Swapna, and thank you everyone for making happen to this event, especially when it is one day before New Year. Okay, the format is I'll introduce you all first, and then we'll straight away jump to panel discussion. So we have Dr. Charu Walikhana, who is PhD in law, advocate Supreme Court, President NGO SAFMA, and former member of the National Commission for Women, has extensive experience in the field of women and child rights, who's counsel for the Union of India in Supreme Court. She is the only advocate to have been honored by SCBA for her writing as many times, and I think 11 to be more precise. Holding an MA in Sociology and PG diplomas in Intellectual Property Rights from Indian Law Institute and Human Rights and International Humanitarian and Refugee Laws from Society of International Law. She has attended the session on Public International Law at Hague Academy of International Law, Netherlands. She is an eminent jurist on a number of committees with a successful start to her career in advertising. Disturbed by the violence and inequalities in society in her capacity as a lawyer, she championed the cause of the vulnerable and marginalized sections of society, especially women. She founded Social Action Forum for Manavadhikar, briefly as SAFMA, an NGO with special consultative status of the ECOSOC of the United Nations. Dr. Charu has also authored a number of papers. Dr. Charu. We have our next speaker with us, panelist, Dr. G. Venkatesh Rao, and I can see that he's a very jolly personality. Dr. Rao is a designated senior advocate by the Supreme Court of India, specializing in various branches of domestic and international law, constitutional, corporate, tax, and civil and criminal matters. He started his career at the Attorney General for India's office in 1986 and thereafter continued as a government counsel for 20 years and has been practicing in all courts of India as an independent counsel for almost 31 years. He has been a counsel in several high-profile matters for Government of India, both for domestic and international corporate entities, including the Harshit Mehta scam. He has been an office bearer, both elected and appointed, of international organizations addressing UN bodies and conferences, notably as Vice President, Global Education Law Forum, Amsterdam, Vice President, World Peace Congress, Bangkok. And he's also been a life member and the recently elected Vice President of the prestigious Indian Society of International Law. He has also received a lot of awards, needless to say, with 31 years of experience. To name recent ones, P.V. Narasimha Rao Foundation Centenary Award, Lex Falcon Global Awards, Dubai, Shining Star of Asia Award by UN affiliates. And he has, his education, he has international qualifications, including LLD and DLIT from Commonwealth University, the London Graduate School, and Ashcroft University, London. Dr. Rao has also authored a lot of books and published papers. Thank you, Dr. Rao. We have our third speaker, Ms. Priyanka Chadha. Born in a middle-class family and raised by a working mother, now a retired brigadier from the Indian Army, Priyanka has always been passionate about what women can achieve without making less of their responsibilities towards the family. And now, shared responsibility of raising a family and household chores can progressively develop an egalitarian gender ideology. An accomplished, people focused leader with over 20 years of experience in financial services, ITES, and consulting firms, leading HR strategy and operations. Building and scaling organizations across India, Japan, EU, APAC, and the Pacific region. Common Culture Accelerator has always been inclusiveness for internal and external stakeholders. Priyanka has worked across multiple HR disciplines and has been expert in creating business operating models and other related expert areas. She has held various strategic positions, including HR consultant at the International Finance Corporation, World Bank Group, HR Director of Foresight Group International, Head of Learning and Development and People Engagement at Boston Consulting Group, BCG, and several Indian based multinational companies. Thank you, Priyanka, for making this. Our next speaker is Aparna Saraugi, if I'm right in the pronunciation, is an IIT Delhi alumnus, a Bharati Scholarship holder, and TEDx speaker. Aparna is the recipient of the Young Innovator and Leader Award by the Israel Embassy in India and a winner of several prestigious Women Leaders Awards. She has recently awarded the UK via the City Rising Star Global Achievement Award 2022 for her work on inclusion. She has more than 15 years of experience in investment banking, risk management, consulting, technology adoption, and greenfield project management. She heads Credit Risk India, NatWest Group, and is a co-founder of social initiatives, Women Entrepreneurship and Empowerment, that is WEE platform, and inclusive innovation in New Normal at INS Square, both global platforms to strengthen women economic empowerment. She has been a speaker at various prestigious forums like bilateral discussions on women empowerment. We're very glad. Aparna. Our fifth speaker is Ms. Linika Khattar. Linika comes with a diverse experience of 25 plus years in the banking and technology industry and is currently leading diversity and inclusion initiatives at NASCOM. Everybody knows about NASCOM. As the D&I leader, she is responsible for steering initiatives, celebrating and positively influencing the policies to create a more diverse and inclusive workforce in the IT industry. Thank you so much, all of you. That was work for me, Swapna. So we start with the discussion. What are your first thoughts on the theme? Our theme for today is systemic changes to make the environment more inclusive. Just very brief, your first thoughts.
So I would say thank you for inviting us. And when Swapna called me and she said you have to come one day before the year end, I thought it cannot be a better time than this to be here because there's so much happening right now. What is it? And I think this is the best time to discuss how we can drive inclusion because there is the biggest risk as well as biggest opportunity. And I think together this panel can make inclusion happen so that everybody brings the best to the organization and we make a world where we have ample opportunities for all. So thank you, Sapna, for inviting.
Thank you for making me a part of this esteemed panel. I think it's a very critical time that gender and inclusion, we're discussing it, but now there has to be some serious implementation. And I hope that 2023, with this discussion, we'll come out like this and some policies, some white paper that will be able to actually give actionable points so that inclusion can be part of the society and policy, especially in a country like India, where women, 50% of the population, where half the sky is deprived from the benefits of women.
Thank you for inviting me, Swapna. And, I'm mobbed and swarmed by very eminent panelists, and I hold the flag for the male species and the shortcomings and the other things that we do. I may be be getting punched on both sides, but like I'm like the boy who stood on the burning deck, and I'm going to stand here to support, all the rights that women must have, and which they already enjoy, and do as best as possible to ensure better implementation, better development, and adherence. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Swapna, for inviting me, and I'm delighted to be a part of this event group here. I think the fact that each one of us have made it on one milestone year end, just reflects on how important the topic or how important this whole agenda of bringing forth women at workplace is. I think the numbers talk for themselves, in terms of where India stands and how do we compare to the world. Not that the world is doing very well, but given all the macroeconomic changes which are happening, the changes which are happening at the economic and the socio level as well, it's important that we stop being reactive to the agenda of diversity at workplace and we take proactive measures. So I'm delighted to be a part of the systematic change which will be happening in the future.
Hi, thank you, Swapna, and thank you everyone for inviting me here. See, the conversation today, which is systemic changes, brings in a lot of pressure on minds, right, of people like us who have to drive the change. Somehow, prior to this, being a working women for the last 26 years without a career break, I started working way back in 1996 when there was a lot of exclusion, right? So to me, I think the words come way forward, and I can only see it improving every day. So it will be very interesting to understand from the eminent panelists here in terms of what do we mean by saying systemic changes, because a lot of this changes every day, and a lot of this is very person dependent. It's individual dependent, more than policy dependence, right? It is more to do with people like us who are working in organization in terms of our day-to-day working, our day-to-day behaviors, our day-to-day responses. And to me, a lot of changes will come by more and more awareness and more conversations around it. So it will be interesting to hear in terms of what do we mean by systemic changes. So I'm here to learn. Thank you.
Thank you, Linika. I think I'll not use the mic, and all five of you can share this mic. My question to all of you is if you can share whatever best systemic change practice you have observed. Maybe you have observed it yourself by any other individual or any corporate, any best practice that you can think of.
See, I will talk on behalf of the sector. Honestly, there are a lot of best practices that have come in the sector, not to include women, but to have the right gender balance. And practices that I'm really fan of, for example, returnship is a practice which most of the tech companies are following today, which basically means that organizations in the tech industry are encouraging women to come back after a career break. So there are structured programs to say how do women come back after a career break. So that's the practice which I'm and there are more and more companies who are joining this gang of practicing or welcoming women coming back after a career break. And it's a well-structured program, which basically means that you can apply separately, you come as a cohort, you are mentored separately, there are job roles that are defined, and your progress is monitored in terms of going up the levels. So that's a practice which, really encourages me as a D&I practitioner to say, and I can see more and more companies talking about it almost every day.
That's great one, Lenika. In fact, I'm also a huge fan of returnship to work. I'll just build on what Lenika mentioned. Why do women drop out from the workforce? I think this question should really be, and when we look at this whole systematic change that we want to bring in, and Lenika's absolutely right. It's not that we've not come a long way. We've come a long way over the last 30 years. But we keep going back to the narrative of the gender roles, which, either of the genders are required to play. And that's typically why women break out from the workforce. So, one of the practices which I saw was in one of the consulting firms where I was working, and we created the career paths in a way and options for workforce in a way. It was not for women or for men. It was just designed in a way that anybody would have a choice depending upon the milestones that they were, whether it was a personal milestone or it was professional milestone. They could tweak the career choices they wanted to make. Do you want to take the promotion? Do you want to work, flexi time? Just had a child, could be a man or a woman. Raising child is equal responsibility. Do you want to do a 9 to 6 job? No, you want to do a part of the role. All these options were created without having that feeling that you're falling back in the career, without even having to take a break. I think for me, I'm a huge fan of, that the option of the path you want to take should be your choice. It should not be someone else's. It should not be that of an organization. So I think that for me, that really stands out.
I'm going to give you a slightly different perspective of things as a preliminary observation of mine from personal experience. I went to a school in Delhi, a public school. It's called the Army Public School. And right from my nursery, we had only female teachers. And the impact that it had on all of us was immense, that we were taught how not to make any discrimination or any difference between men and women. And it was a co-ed school. So we had equal number of boys and girls, right from nursery. And majority of all the teachers, I don't recall many male teachers except one mathematics teacher and perhaps a physical, the PT, physical training teacher. I don't recall too many of male teachers at all, as a matter of fact. So it was President Obama says he's colorblind because he doesn't distinguish between black and white because he grew up that way. It's a similar kind of observation that I never had. There was no real difference and distinction between men and women from the early years. So that stuck, and all of us, grew up like that. I know all my classmates who have never been disrespectful to women or never even ever thought in a discriminatory fashion. Women leadership was accepted. We had house captains who were, girls, and they were respected and obeyed and so on and so forth. So therefore, I think the root cause of dealing with this problem, of course, we will discuss with different aspects of it, is right from the schooling time, when you have especially excellent teachers. I mean, women are the best teachers, as a matter of fact. I don't think we would have made such good students at the later date if we didn't have some of our teachers in those days, and they did a great job of it. And they were very respected, all of our teachers. So that's one point I'd like to make immediately in terms of how we should be dealing or looking at dealing with the problem for future generations. The second point I want to try to make is that in the metropolitan, not only in the metropolitan cities all across India, this particular mindset which we have, and we as men came to acquire because of the kind of environment that was created, is right across. It's right across all the metropolitan cities. Of course, we have, you see, each newer situation has different kind of issues which we have to deal with. And here I must point out the fact that you will be happy to know that not only women are, have holding leadership positions right across in every walk of life. My own very classmate, it was a proud moment for all of us to see, was sitting heading the Security Council presidency
in the United Nations. Mr. Shura Kamboj was my classmate from 10th to 12th. And when India was heading the presidency of Security Council, she sat in the seat and in the entire horseshoe table in the Security Council, she was heading that. Now that's the place women have reached. And well, endless examples of chief ministers and judges and bureaucrats everywhere. So the important thing is that we have come a long, long way in all of these 75 years of our independence. So we ought to look at fine-tuning of the rights of women and peculiar special problems like the ones you're talking about, rather than believing that we have not arrived. And if you look at the entire list of the countries in the world of 193 or whatever in the UN and about 2,200 in the rest of the world, we are really leaders in that. I mean, therefore, our discussion should be based upon more positive aspects of it rather than viewing, and also, of course, that it should percolate to the rural areas of the country. I think that's the focus we should have, and we should have, the individual instances where they're going off from work or they want to do a work from home or any other specific problem there. Thank you.
Thank you. My esteemed panelists have spoken so beautifully about the best practices and they've been limited to the educator and the corporate world. But being a human rights activist, my field of experience relates to the underprivileged. So I feel when we're really talking about inclusion, I like to give a best practice in which rural women were included. This is quite a good project. I had read about it somewhere. From my Hindustan neighbors.
And they started a project in the rural areas, training rural women in health and hygiene, also in sales, and making intention was so that they can get involved in income generating activities by selling their products, shampoo, personal care, which was quite a big success. The reach was almost like they had 4 lakh women, and almost, I think, 165 odd lakh villages were covered all over the country. And this was phenomenal because, once a woman has the power of being financially independent, and it's not like, I just like to tell you, Dr. Rao, it's not a male versus female. So, we have to complement, both the sexes have to, both the genders have to complement each other. And in this program itself, this Shakti program, they had Shaktimans also. They trained those people. They were the male members, the husbands or the brothers who would go on a cycle or other. I mean, this is long ago now. Everybody has, electric vehicles. And simultaneously, the company got the competitive edge because they also linked it with allied industries like banking and telecom. And the women were told how to recharge a card. They were selling SIM cards. So, like in the vegetable market, you were having sale of SIM cards. You didn't have to go to a shop or to the city. So, I think that is real inclusion when the power comes to the woman who's the last mile.
Thank you. And I completely agree with the Women Come Back program. In fact, at NetWest, we follow that. And there are colleagues who have joined us in the Women Come Back program, and they are doing really well. And I strongly believe that once you become a mother, you become a better multitasker, and you can manage anything on this earth. And we see those results coming. Recently, in fact, I was awarded a NetWest Champions Award for my work on driving Women Come Back and other inclusion practice.
If I may share, I'll share some personal story with this group. So a few years back, I started realizing that as I was moving up the corporate ladder, we were seeing very few women out there. And wanted to do something about it. Being an empowered woman, we should do something else than that. So I started doing the research, which I did with the rural and across the globe. And what we found out was that women today wants to take a next. They want to be economically informed. Gone are those days that we want to be at the front, and that's a really good change that is happening. But still, we don't have so many role models. We do have role models, but time of I would say some of them have become golden skirts also with the same women, right, going into multiple boards and all. India is not suffering that much from that, but still, right? We don't have. And most of the ecosystem, whether it's a corporate world or venture capitalists, they are dominated by men. So women have to go a little bit extra mile to prove themselves. We have to find some of the unconscious bias. And sometimes, I mean, we all can relate to that. That sometimes we are called aggressive, they're too aggressive, they're too dominating. Maybe I'm assertive. Maybe I'm asking my right. That's my right. If I worked hard, I deserve that promotion. I deserve to be at that hostel. If I worked hard, maybe I worked harder, right? Because I would have fought hundred of patriarchal things, unconscious biasness, household responsibilities, my personal health things, because we all go through the regular cycles and everything. So we thought, what do we do about it? How do we solve that problem so that we are able to come to the a lady who wants to do something, right? Not to talk about the talk, but someone like me or an ordinary girl, but I want to contribute to the society. So we came up with a very unique model, which actually became India's first of its kind model, where we say we move our journey from me, where I stand in, to we, maybe couple, few of us, and we, where we all come together and help each other. So we started something called Women Entrepreneurship and Empowerment Platform, where we got women entrepreneurs who wanted to be an entrepreneur. That's they can be in different part of their entrepreneurship. They might have business idea, they might be in the market, they might have a minimum viable product, but different part of the entrepreneurship and completely different sectors. Somebody was making a sanitary napkins, other was in a AI, 3D, making a skincare products from the donkey, all different parts of the India. And we have the cases there was people who couldn't even speak English. That's but they had their business acumen. English is not related to business acumen. That's very important for us. And they were very obviously double PhD in triple course. We got them in a one platform and we said that let's support each other. That's the only thing we did. We got them in IIT classrooms and we said let's support each other. Let's be each other friends, founder, co-founder, producer, consumer. And you know what the result was? Almost 90% of them succeeded and they are making a good money today. And I'm representing India in Israel, Canada, Estonia, US, and few more countries because of this. Because our model became a very unique kind of model where we were the first time we thought that come different sectors across the country. Because when diversity comes, that's where the miracles happen. When we say that we support each other, we help each other, and that's where the miracles happen. If you're talking about systematic changes, my submission to this group would be, I think we need more women in board. Because that's where we need more women in executive positions. And we need to form the groups. Maybe we have the IoT representatives, NASCOM representatives, the lawyers, and the G100. We need to form those groups where women can show their potential, where they can support each other, where they can hold each other hand and say, okay, I'll be there. Let's support each other and let's create the miracles. Let's get to that. And that would be my submission to this group. And if we can do that, I think it is not far away. We'll have a 50% representation in the board, 50% representation in the executive position, and across the organization, whether it's anything. So that's that. And I'm not about quotas. If you ask me, I'm against the quotas. Completely against. Because that's not a right. That is required, I know, in the beginning to sometimes many Nordic countries have done. But when it should be mind, right? I think we have that caliber inside it. We are Saraswati, we are Lakshmi, we are Durga. So I think sure we can do it. It's just that we have to create that platform. If this organization can create the platform, I think we can achieve it.
I think you very rightly pointed out IoT and its role. I mean, I think these kind of organizations play a very great role. And I think they have a special women's batch also where it's all women board training. So, but yeah, there are a lot of policies on paper, including government policies and private policies. Companies have it, but then where does it go wrong? I mean, is it that if they're not implemented, there's lack of training, or there's lack of zeal, motivation? What do you think? Where is it going wrong? If there are policies and they're not being implemented,
do we have the fighter? Like that's where it's so people are genuinely interested in inclusion. I understand, right? Because we understand we get to get value out of it. It's a business imperative. It's no longer a social cause. It's a business imperative. My team is not diverse. I cannot be innovative. And the researchers again and again prove the companies which are diverse, they have less NPS, non-performing assets. They're much more innovative. They understand their cost. I think we all know it is required. But do we have the pipeline? And I think that's where we all need to think. How do we create the pipeline? How do we nurture the pipeline? How do we make sure we're standing with those? And not just with a few groups, the whole diverse set of women that we are standing. And again, business acumen is not directly related to education. I'm a big fan of education, but we need to strengthen that and we need to create the platform so that these are able to showcase and we can. I think sometimes it feels genuine problem to get it, right? We don't, that
See, because a lot of women in leadership positions are always talking about the boys' club. Forget about the boys' club or try. Why do you want even to break into the boys' club? Create your own club. Stand by each other. Why should we try? But the problem is that once you reach a particular level of ascent, you want to be with them because mentally you still feel that there's some way that is a more prestigious place rather than to take your group along with you. And as far as policies, we were talking about that the policies are they're all there, they're on paper, like with the Me Too movement, which exposed the corporate world, not only the corporate media everywhere. I mean, after the Posh Act, it was mandatory to have an internal complaints committee. It was mandatory. Your annual reports have to reflect the complaints. Even the district officer, even the complaints have to be given on a regular basis to the district officer. But what is happening? Everyone just ignored it. ICC has not been constituted. If the ICC is constituted, it's just a name, and there are maybe the employers, persons or the third party, or even the lawyers, because you see corporate lawyers get paid very heavily. And when they come on the board or when they become a part of the ICC, there's a tendency to favor the employer. So unfortunately, in spite of having everything in place, in spite of the act defining what is sexual harassment in section 2, also talking about prevention and saying any kind of inducement or any kind of position or any kind of gratification amounts to sexual harassment. Despite that, these things are happening. Why? Because there is no visibility. One of the most important things in duties in the POSH Act, in Section 19, the duties of an employer, they're supposed to have awareness programs. We went to, so as a member of the National Commission, we went to a lot of banks. We went to a lot of public sector banks. And everyone said, oh, no, we don't have any case. I said, not having a case does not mean it's a good environment. It's better to have a case and deal with it. And the Act clearly says that you have to put the penal consequences of sexual harassment in a conspicuous place. Now, what is a conspicuous place is left to you and me to decide, but it does, because you see, people will be more wary when they know that the company is going to take action against them. I would say prevention is better than cure, rather than getting in a messy situation. So let the corporates, let the employer show that they're serious about zero tolerance, and things will fall in place, like when you're talking about the pipeline. But that seriousness is not being reflected in spite of the law. I think we really need to create a lot of awareness and dialogue. Yes, yes, absolutely, because that's why she doesn't complain. We did a research for National Human Rights Commission, and women are uh, not at the higher level. We did it amongst the female-dominated industries, that is the low-income groups, and the women said, "We've gone through it. We want to just go on working. We will not complain." But they were more serious about POXO. They said, "But we don't want anyone to touch our child." So you see, somehow we have mentally there's a subordination. You see, we've accepted our subordinate status, which we need to get out of.
Yeah, well, I would look at it somewhat differently. I mean, it doesn't, as extreme as one may think, because if you look at it, of course, we are traveling. We are traveling. It's a journey, and in this journey, we've had the Vishaka judgment given by the Supreme Court. I was there in those days, and that's how the sexual harassment committees have been formed, and it's now mandatory by law. Now, female directors in companies, that's again at least one director, that's again by law. And recently, I'll give you a very small example. Because of the women traveling in the Uber and other things, they've introduced women drivers as cab drivers, and it's just getting there. So it is that there is an effort that is being made. We are a society which is not. If you look at it from even that perspective, European countries right across are looking at 30% at least. They were pegging it at that in representation in all, spectrum of the fields of work. If we've gone a step ahead, we have the recent judgment on women joining the armed forces and combat positions. We have fighter pilots who are some of the attacks were done by the women pilots in our neighboring countries. So I think the only thing is the awareness has to increase. And the awareness must increase from a positive perspective rather than from a negative perspective. That, it's our mindset. Once you change your mindset and you say that, it ought to get better, it ought to be better than to say, okay, there's nothing that's happening, is not the way to go about it. It's how you bring about change. You bring about change by giving hope. You bring about change by telling the good qualities and the benefits of having the equality and the gender participation in areas where they were either too unknown. They become stockbrokers. Stockbroking was an area where it was all male dominated. Real estate brokers, they've come in to join. Interestingly, I found. So it's happening and it must get better. Rather than, I do understand. If you look at it, even some of the most developed societies have issues like sexual harassment and things like that. But it is the awareness that we create that will improve the situation far better than what it is. And the second point is, which I find most from the elite perspective, there are women folk who go in the CSR. I know how they go and work in CSR for education of women and work for their rights, go into rural areas and educate them and enlighten them about it. And government programs. Recently, I did I was talking at the Department of Justice. Department of Justice, the Government of India body under the government, which is doing programs through video conferencing and connecting and encouraging women at grassroots level to come and participate, to even become as entrepreneurs in small scale industries, cottage industries. There is this effort. That effort must be enhanced in various ways, and you must find areas where there is either lack of participation. One of the important issues that was brought forward is, maternity leave when a woman takes a break. I think what we can do today. Recently I was sitting on a jury of awards. I found a woman who's married and she's in a remote area where her husband was having some kind of businesses, and she's been working from home on video conferencing, doing legal work for people right across the country and overseas. So you see, unique perspectives, unique approaches must be shown to others who perhaps don't have that opportunity, and that's where the focus must lie, rather than believing that not much is, we have not achieved much, and it's a dismal picture. I mean, I would like to encourage hope and the desire to improve the conditions rather than fires. Or as they say, it's better to light a candle than to curse the darkness. Not that I'm saying any one of us is saying that, but I just like to eliminate that from the minds, because once you have a look at it and you're giving a dissatisfied perspective, then it slows the pace. The pace of development is based upon hope and belief that already we've achieved the considerable and we ought to achieve more. Thank you.
I think you very rightly pointed out the issue of maternal leave. Countries like Sweden have parental leave. So it's not a maternal or paternal leave. It is 1 year for both the parents, and child is not the responsibility of the mother only. So either of the parent can seek that leave. So
the child requires some attention in the first.
So those kind of
from the mother
in India, and also in fact, as per the government leaves, there's 2 year leave for the
they have introduced that
employee.
And it took
And that was introduced, I think.
a couple of years for government to realize that there can be a single father who may need childcare leave.
Yeah.
So those kind of issues, yes, please continue.
So I think my eminent panelists have spoken about a lot of issues which are already getting addressed in a very systematic manner. So we do have our answers here. But let me play a bit of a devil's advocate. Okay. So if I have got the numbers right, and Soumya, you've done your homework. So Swapna, you've done your homework. So tell me if my numbers are right. The difference between male participation in workforce and women participation in workforce in developed nations like US, Australia, is about 40%. The difference between workforce participation between the two genders in India is 52%. Okay. We're not very far behind from developed nations. Now, if you dig a little deeper, what are the reasons for, what are the commonalities between the developed nations and countries like India? Why are women dropping out from the workforce? You'd be surprised to know that two of the reasons is same. One being affordable childcare, and the second is easy access to transportation. These are the two common reasons which cut across emerging, developing nations and developed nations. The third one, which is very peculiar to India, is education. So it's not that, we've not done, or we have not, like Dr. Arun is saying, we've not made changes, or we've not come along where we have, acts like the Maternity Benefit Act, which was revisited in 2017, the POSH Act, which came in, the Skill India movement, which is doing so much work in the remotest of regions in India, which we would not have heard of. Great work done by NASSCOM in bringing about some of the key changes in policies. They are behind a lot of new initiatives which are running across corporates. But then the fact still remains that there is some reason, why we are still falling behind, right? What is that? And what I have experienced, based on my 2 decades in industry, and please pardon me, I don't know much about anything which is outside of corporate, a bit of armed forces, but not much out of corporate. But what I've realized is that there is a lot of, this narrative which we are given the moment a child is born, and we carry it with us throughout our lives. I wish there were a little more, audience here. We would have done a poll. Let me just throw in a question. How many of you receive a call from any of your parents-in-law, for taking them to the hospitals? Girl childs, ladies, all of us? Okay. How many of you get a call if your parents need advice on taxation?
Not bad.
Not bad.
Excellent.
Not bad. Excellent.
But this is a different group.
But this is a different group. But what I was trying to say is that the reasons why your parents would reach out to you, or would ask your help, would be very different from what they would need from your male siblings to female siblings. You enter a shop to buy a gift for a child. You'll only say that, I want a gift for a child. The first thing the guy will ask, the shopkeeper will ask, ma'am, ladka hai ya ladki? The child would not ask that, okay, do you know what the child prefers? Do you know what is the age? What do they enjoy doing? The questions are not about the choices. The question is about the gender. It plays really deeper than what we know of, and that's where the whole, I think, Aparna had spoken about unconscious bias. We bring it back to the places we work. And it could be anywhere. It could be anywhere. It could be corporates, it could be fields, it could be factories, it could be anything. We are continuously, even our other counterparts, male counterparts, ourselves, why just talk about women and men? Let's talk about transgenders. Let's talk about people with different orientation, right? there's so much of unconscious bias because the society has assumed that this is how things should be, this is how we are brought up, and that's how it should be. And anything that changes, it just ruffles too many feathers. It's not acceptable, or it takes a lot of time to accept that change. So I think my main issue here would be that there's a lot of unconscious bias that we deal with, and it's in our heads, it's in the heads of the women, it's as much as in the heads of the men. So coming back to your question on training, I think it's very important that we do very thought through training programs which should cascade from top down. I think Aparna again spoke about boardroom presence for women. Boardroom presence for women is important, but it's also important that the rest of the people there understand what diversity, equity, and inclusion is all about. They understand the benefits, they understand the nuances, they understand the challenges. It cascades down to the next level, your managers, hiring managers, etc., and the circle of influence. Build that whole ecosystem community that we were talking about. Why do you want to be a part of the boys' club? Create your own club. But I think it's important that the club is one. It doesn't have to be a boys' club or a girls' club. It has to be one club. It has to be same set of people who are looking out for each other, because it's a we, right? It's not an I and a you. And that's what I want to bring back to what Dr. Arun was talking about. Dr. Rao was talking about, from his experience of the school days, that egalitarian mindset is extremely important in terms of the society that we want to create in the future. I'll take a couple of more minutes. I think in the training, we really need to invest, whether it is in this whole corporate world or outside of corporate world, in rural areas. It's important that we coach and guide and mentor the women to get out of this. I don't know if you've heard of it, but you would have heard of it for sure. There's this whole gold roti syndrome. Have you heard of that? Yeah. Gold roti syndrome is that your whole existence is judged by the quality of food you can make. Okay?
You can make gold.
So it doesn't matter what is the skill you have. It doesn't matter, a woman could be one of the best wheat growers, or she could be one of the most skillful weaver, or she could be, heading NASCOM for DNI, but her whole existence would get defined by the awesome food that she can make, right? And we continue to carry that with each other. I think we have to get coached in terms of being able to get out of that mindset, not try to be perfectionist in everything, and take it from there. Thank you.
So, I think I'll start. I've been hearing Aparna and then Pam and then someone I heard. See, Aparna, for example, when she spoke about this women entrepreneur program, I had witnessed to that program, and I saw a lot of women entrepreneurs having come together and benefited from that program. So, and to your point of saying, are the policies only on paper and not being implemented? I don't think that is the case. I think maternity policy, POSH policy, awareness sessions, I think that's happening, and that's like given. Honestly, as NASCOM, we are not even talking about that, because that's given, considered, happening. People are talking about, like for example, on a POSH, what are people talking about? What does POSH mean in a hybrid environment? Right? Because when I'm working from home, what would POSH mean? Right? Because anything could mean, so that is the level to which we have gone. So as you said, parental leave, right? In India, there are a lot of organizations who are talking about parental leave, who are talking about fathers given time off. There are some government organizations who already started talking about single father, leave, etc. So I think as a country, we've gone ahead of all of that. I mean, honestly. To your point of roti syndrome, I'm 23 years married and I don't think I've done cooking. Only time that I did cooking was COVID. When my
You're
mates
definitely an outlier.
yeah. So I'm saying things have a lot changed. I'll give another perspective of how can we better it. See, the problem that we are facing in the tech sector, and Navarna would vouch for it, is that so we basically are saying there is a gender proportionality principle, right? So there is a pyramid. So the gender proportionality principle means at the bottom of the pyramid, you are 50-50. When you go up middle, you ideally should be 50-50. But when you go up, you should be 34%. And this doesn't talks about biased towards any particular gender. This is basically saying the right proportion of both the genders, right? At the bottom, at the mid, and the top. And honestly, what is the industry today struggling with? And honestly, they are struggling. You know, I get calls, people want to do diverse hiring. For want of better words, they want to do diverse hiring. And right now we're talking about gender, so I'll also focus on that. So the problem is not as much as the at the bottom. To some extent, I think we definitely want to encourage women, girls to take STEM as an education, right? The problem is more at the middle and obviously worsens when we go at the top. So that's the situation. Now, when we are thinking about it, what happens, right? At the bottom, we have so many women, and at the middle, they seem to be disappearing, and at the top, few women reach there, right? So, couple of things. One, very clearly, see, today it's not about work-life balance. It's not for the sector that we talk about. It's hybrid. You could work from home. You have the flexibility to do your work. You could be sitting with your laptop at 7 o'clock in the morning and be sitting with your laptop at 9 o'clock in the night. So what is it? Couple of things. So hybrid has changed priorities for a lot of women. And it could be for me, right? When you sit at home and you're working from home, it is very easy for you to prioritize your priorities because a lot of priorities that you would not see when you would go to work would all be visible. See, anyways, we are tiptoeing every day, right? Because there's so much of societal pressure to say doing parenting is 2.5 times more than doing the office work, right? So we are absolutely struggling with that. So that's one. Second, women working from home, there is that diversity of workplace, women or men. I'm saying diversity of workplace, right? You can't see me, I can't see you. We are all coming for meetings, right? So there's unconscious bias. There's that bias of saying there's proximity bias, right? We are not seeing, we are not working together. Somebody's working from home, somebody's working from office. So now what is very important is some of the other aspects of diversity. See, diversity will only give you seat at the table, right? The other aspects of understanding equity, inclusion, belonging, right? Those aspects today, and especially to have the right gender balance, to get women continue to work and continue to grow, these aspects will be very, very important. Right? So once the women or anybody has a seat on the table, how do you include them to have a voice at the table? And the moment the person has the voice at the table, how do you culturally make the shift for the person to belong on the table, right? Because see, that is why she said, Aparna said, let's sit there and do the discussions, right? Because she felt it will be more comfortable. We will both be relating to each other. So let's sit there. Why sit at the dais, right? Because she did not want to have the baggage of the dais. So she wanted to feel more belonged to get the right output. And that is the struggle. And women are more emotional.
There's also the unconscious bias
Yeah.
people carry for themselves.
So I think it's not the unconscious bias that much, but it's the it's the emotional baggage that we carry. It's very important for people in the middle managers or senior levels to be able to relate to all of that. And so we basically say until and unless people relate to us, right? So they will not understand. So you also have an emotional question, understand and respond back very fast. So the other aspects, which is the equity, inclusion, belonging, equity would mean same equal playing field that you give to everybody, right? You embrace the differences and give the same playing field to everybody. I think some of those is very important. Now, when I looked at, I was thinking, what could we do? What changes could we do in the policies, right? So to my mind, it is just about talking as much about it, creating awareness about it, right? Because a lot of people don't understand. See, I was a salesperson for such a long time. I did not understand these concepts at all, right? For me, it was objective. Absolutely. My numbers, hardcore, all of that was important, right? I would not even understand. But if I would have understood it then, I would have made the person feel belonged, right? I would have understood everybody is different. It's okay, some of that. So that is why all of this is important for women to continue at workforce. Otherwise, the priorities will change.
I think both of you in your talk tried to cover the behavioral changes which are needed apart from the policy changes. My next question was that since both of you have already shared your views, three of you, if you could share your views on what behavioral changes we need to also focus on apart from the policy changes to make the environment more inclusive.
You see, I want to I want to focus on a particular perception that women's rights are propagated, promoted, and developed by women alone. That is not true. If that was the case, maybe you would not have me sitting here. And I know a lot of people, a lot of men who support all of the women's rights. I mean, in fact, there was a law where, inheritance, equality in inheritance by law has been brought about. And that our parliament is majority of men, by the way. So the law was passed by a majority of men in terms of giving them the rights. And all of the laws, if you see, that have been passed supporting women's rights, whether it's the crime against women cell in the police, this thing, or the National Commission, all of these are laws passed by men, majority of men. So I think if we try to look at it from a different perspective of seeing that here there are sections of male in the society who actually support the rights and their participation and equality of women, I think we would have a better perception and with the ability to do more. And that's the inclusive aspect which also we must look at. Where if you simply looked at it from a perspective of women's rights being fought for or being advocated by women alone, I think you may leave out the best friends that you actually have. So I guess that is a very important perception that you must have. But having said that, I will reserve some of the other side, my side of the people's story for the end. But then over to Charlie.
See, you raised a very relevant issue. We've also spoken about biases and mindsets. Even the woman's own mindset, which kind of, she believes in her subordinate status. Mindsets can be changed. We're talking about training, mentoring, guiding. I feel mindsets can be only changed by two things. One is the law. Law can do it, the policy and the law can do it to a limited extent. And the most successful law, I would say, is the 72nd and 73rd Amendment to the Constitution, which gave reservation to women at Panchayati Raj level and the municipality. It changed the whole country. It changed the moment you give woman a power. She's going to decide, which computer to buy in the panchayats, which school, who are the teachers, what's the role. And it was just impossible. The men resisted. They said, is she going to tell us that how to, build roles to make contracts? But it changed the whole scenario. But at the emotional level, which we talk with the side, at the personal level, This change can only come through mindset change. I feel, I mean, my experience, I could be wrong, please correct me. I feel mindsets are intergenerational. It can only come through education.
Yeah.
And that means from 4 to 4. The government has to get very serious about starting early to change the mindset. It's not like a laddu. Every time an incident of crime happens, they say, oh, mindsets have to be changed. It's not that, you give something. It is intergenerational. Like Nancy just said, that you yourself, you were doing sales all along. You didn't realize that. That compassion, that sensitivity, when we talk about gender sensitization, we have gender sensitization workshops, but we've had them with the police and with many corporates. But one workshop isn't going to change anything. I can't give a lecture, people ask some questions, some examples. It's not going, it may provoke you to think. It may create a dent in your mind and it will provoke a chain of reaction. You may think, am I doing right? Where did I go wrong? But it will not totally change your mindset. So I think these are two things. It has to come through the education.
Change the mic. That mic is not. Thank you. So I agree with you, Mr. Rao, that we have come a long way and we should think positively. And I think India is doing exceptionally well on these fronts. But now we have just G20 presidency and women development is one of the core agenda. I think we can definitely do. Now, if I have to look, if I have to say on this, I think we are living in a very VUCA world and a lot of things are going to change. A lot of the jobs which we are doing today might not exist tomorrow because of the AI, machine learning, a lot of things are coming. And I think EQ would become much and much important. Emotional intelligence, collaboration, creative thinking. And women are really good at that. That's our core strength. And it is a time that we should leverage it. I recently wrote an article for Business World why women and AI are best friends. Because I think technology is my best friend. I mean, if I have to go anywhere, I use Uber. I have to buy anything, I use Amazon. I mean, I need technology for almost everything. And technology is our best friend. And technology is evolving much, much faster. It's there. Chat GPT and all things are there. So I think we talk about men and machine coming together. We should say men, women, and everybody coming together. And that can bring a real change. I also see a threat around here, and that's what I wrote in my article also. Because with technology coming in, some of the low skill jobs would go away, and women are employed there. As Linika pointed out, at entry level, we have 51% of the women. And if those jobs get automated, our female labor force participation can go down. So that's a risk again we are running. But there are a lot of new high-end jobs which are coming, which are based on EQ and other things. And I think if we start thinking about it today, we start developing those skills today. We start coaching, mentoring, forming groups, talking about those things, creating awareness. I think women can take really a big leap and we can be on much more senior positions. But we all need to come together. It's a systematic change we are talking about. This cannot be done by one person or one organization. It has to be done as a collective effort. Focus on the new skills, making sure that women are integral part of. Because one thing which we lacked earlier was that if you talk about engineering college, we didn't have so many women representation, IITs or NECs. We don't have that. But if we make sure the new skills, the future skills, and I think NASCOM is leading that. If you have good representation for women, focusing on their strength, I think world is not far off where we'll have the gender parity and we'll have the billions of dollars added to our economy because we'll have a gender parity.
I think one of the themes that I can take out from this is that we are talking about two Indias and we are talking about two different challenges. So we are talking about Bharat and we are talking about India. So most of what we are discussing is, relevant to India, and some of it, which Linika rightly pointed out, is Bharat and your submission of Panchayati Raj. My last question to all of you is, what key focus areas you would suggest for the systemic change that we all are talking about in both Bharat and India, whatever comes to your mind?
Like it's been repeated by all of them, I reiterate more women's leadership is critical. and more CEOs, more women judges with the highest law, and more women parliamentarians. They'll understand what they've gone through, whether it's policy making law, they'll be able to put together things in a better way. You said that emotional intelligence is way better.
Sorry. Yeah, you see, I was part of a movement called the National Alliance for Fundamental Right to Education. This was in the 90s, and some of our friends, both men and women, young men and women, we started a movement called Making Education a Fundamental Right. Some of you may be knowing law, and some of you may not know, but education was not a fundamental right. Right to education was not a fundamental right. So as a result of that movement, post some cases in the Supreme Court, the right to education was made a fundamental right. And Article 21A. Now, the importance of fundamental right, for some of you, you can petition the court and say, my right has been infringed, and where is my right? So that's how sanctity, the greatest sanctity that you have are of fundamental rights, which include women's rights, everything, liberty and right to life, freedom of speech, expression, all of these come in that. Now, what has happened as a result of that? As a result of including right to education as a fundamental right, from the age of 4 to 16, free and compulsory education is being provided by the state right across the country without any gender discrimination, both to boys and girls. So when that happens, education becomes accessible to every section, rich, poor, whatever you. And those who can't afford it, especially those who can't afford it, those who can afford it, they will send their children to schools. Now, when you have education at that high level and an immense effort being made by state itself to educate the families and the young people on these rights, especially women's rights, you are going to have right across the country people coming with that mindset. So according to me, the single most important aspect is education, which not only educates those young boys and girls, but also their families, because there is an awareness that goes with those things. Parents teach their children, and so on and so forth. And therefore, I think the greatest way of tackling some of these issues is through that education program, which is available to us. And many CSR corporates, they go and they use their CSR funds for imparting of education. So if we are able to do that in both as an awareness program and both at the school and college level, I think we're going to have a great to this thing. The other thing is the importance of technology. Women, I have we are from Bangalore, where the tech world, you would probably the women are topping the tipping the balance in the tech world. So therefore, that is I think my wife knows how to use all of this stuff better than I do, which is, order things online and stuff like that. I think they are naturally, it's perhaps a natural inclination for women to be better techies. So that again tips the balance and helps. So thank you. So we have to focus on these areas, and I'm sure it'll spread far and wide. These days, all women have cell phones. I mean, if you want to gift something to your spouse, it's anybody in the house, you give a latest tech mobile, iPad, or computer, and they're more happier than even good old days with other things. So I guess focusing on tech, development and education are the two most important.
So I'm going to talk about Bharat, and then I'm going to talk about India. So picking up from, we were talking about some of the examples we are saying are more generically applicable to outside of corporate world, which is our Bharat. And India is your whole, this IT, ITS, BFSI, all of this FMCG corporate world, right? So just picking on what, the conversation was about on the behavior side, Lenika spoke very well about, that in 23 years, 25 years, she's never made food unless it was COVID. But why did she do that? She made a choice, right?
Rao.
Dr. Rao, Dr. Rao spoke about, allies, looking at men counterpart as allies, looking at them as sponsors, right? This is not something which comes naturally to women. Again, it's a behavior. Charu spoke about education system. That's where it has to change. So I think primarily when I look at it, for me, it's very important that we bring about a systematic change in terms of our behaviors. How do we develop an egalitarian ecosystem ideology? And it has to start very young. It has to start in the schools. It has to start in our families. I don't know how we will figure out ways of building this mindset in the large country we are. But I think that's one thing which would do a lot of good to us as a nation. Now, when it comes to India, I think one systematic change which if I could bring about, and again, it's an incremental thing, it's not a magic wand that would happen overnight. You look at any of these hallmark changes which happened, whether it was the POSH Act, whether it was maternity benefit, whether it was even that thing about, pick and drop for women at late nights post 7 o'clock. These were all rules, regulations, laws which got formulated, right? So if by design we are not people who can accept or remove unconscious bias, then there has to be something which is very well articulated and accepted. So if you come back and if you Google, best places to work for women, you'll find multiple lists, and maybe Lenika can vouch for it, that none of the list would be similar. None of the list would have same. So let's say in best places to work for women, there is, a list by great places to work. There is another list by another organization, another entity. There's another list, and there's 5 such lists. None of these 5 lists will overlap each other. They'll have same common names of companies. Why is that? Because the parameters are different. So I would suggest that, we consider something like a very definitive framework where we say best places to work for women, which includes your equal remuneration, which addresses challenges around the broken rung, where we are talking about, 50% of the women in the pyramid moving up, and henceforth creating a pipeline. We talk about equity, we talk about boardroom presence, all of that. And, this whole, certification or something could really drive the change. And you don't have to penalize organizations for it. You have to provide them an impetus. You have to provide them a reward for bringing about this change. So I think that's typically what I would recommend. Lenika, over to you.
Yeah, I think I can a lot relate to what you said. So a couple of things that come into my mind are, so recognizing is for sure. So I think one of the programs that we run is assess and celebrate.
Yeah.
So inspiring community state stories, right? Women leading change, women coming back to career, or inclusion stories, right? Anybody, intersectionality of visually impaired and AI, or intersectionality of neurodiversity and technology. Because a lot of people who are neurodiverse, they do very well on technology. So I think rewarding for sure in whichever shape and form, so that, see, there are things that rewarding does. One, obviously the organizations or anybody who's doing well, it just helps them to do it more and right, in a more structured way. If we can structure the whole rewarding process, nothing like it.
Yeah.
Because the second thing which comes into my mind is the whole inclusive hiring piece, right? So today, we all know when we sit for an interview, a woman is asked certain questions like, so when are you getting married? I don't think it's happening, but it used to happen. I used to ask that questions myself. So when are you getting married? Oh, okay. So you will be planning your first child. If you're married, you will be planning your first child. So some of those questions are not inclusive hiring. I think that is what I would want to table. And second, you've all heard talent attracts talent. When I come for an interview, I want to see the likes of myself, right? So there needs to be an inclusive panel who's hiring. So a woman should be able to see a woman, and a man should be able to see a man. Or, so the panel should be more inclusive. So that is the second thing which I don't know how can we do as a policy, but it's recommended. A lot of organizations have already started to do it. But the more we talk about it, the more and more people would come to know about it. For example, I'll give you on inclusive hiring, right? All our job descriptions say that you should be able to interact with each other, so socially active, right? A neurodivergent person is not socially active. So the person will say, I don't know how to interact with the other person. I know how to collaborate, but I don't know how to interact. So this is not an inclusive job description. An inclusive job description would mean the candidate should be able to collaborate with the other person. Right? Likewise, there is inclusive hiring for all different workforces. That's the second thing. The third, as a woman, 26 years working, I think what we women for sure need is allyship, mentorship, and sponsorship. And my mentorship is fine. I think we really need sponsorship. We need people who can take us through the path. And I think sponsorship everybody needs, but we need it more than anybody else needs. So if there is a way we could have structured mentorship, structured sponsorship, like for example, and anybody could be an ally, right? In the space of law, in the space of social space, right? Maybe she becomes my ally. She becomes my mentor because what she brings on the table is what I can learn from her. So these are the three. Yeah.
I just want to add one small thing, building on Lenika's point on removing this whole gender piece at the time of hiring. So, so I work with Aldridge, and in our hiring process, there is no question around gender. There's no screening. There's no documentation that talks about gender. It's absolutely based on skill. And, I'm happy to share that we sit at 40+% of our workforce being women. And I can see a complete correlation between, the filters that you apply at the time of hiring and, what get constituted as your workforce. So it's very important that, I think as a country, we absolutely remove this whole piece where the gender the gender filter comes into
Gender neutral job description.
Gender neutral, yeah.
While our names are such that it is very difficult to have a gender neutral job description, but why have a pronoun, right? Your name is enough for a job description.
Yeah, absolutely. Even
or for a CV for that matter.
Absolutely. Even the way the job description is written, it should be gender neutral. It doesn't have to be that he should be able to, or she should.
The person.
It's the person. You're hiring a person, right? So even a simple move as
gender neutral hiring has a lot of aspects, right? Right from the job description to the panel to the conversations. Yeah. So a lot of that.
To the CV, even your photograph to the most. A lot of countries, you don't have to put your photo.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
So my final word on this is, commenting on the status of women from a perspective that I see, laws in force, them being, initiated in from a legal proceeding point of view, and conflict in society, and women's rights, etc. I think the status of women is not that bad. I recently wrote a foreword for a book titled by a lawyer friend who is like past his 70s, maybe about 74, 75, very eminent lawyer from Mumbai, Pune, on battered husbands in India. I'm telling you this, and I'm telling you this. And I not only had an occasion to examine the book and the laws that he said, and the misuse of laws as well, and the reason for which women were agitating or going to the courts and or were in conflict with their husbands. They have equal economic rights. They are financially independent, and they are not willing to have a subservient, position in a marriage. And this was the conclusion, and there was a lot of analysis and things. You may look for that book by Mr. Amit Thomik, who's my friend in Pune. So therefore, I would say that it isn't as bad because of all the laws that have come into force and all of the media communications that is there. Today, the explosion of social media, internet technologies, and WhatsApp technologies, Twitter, all these things. The kind of awareness right across to even the rural women is very high. And that's a very good feature, and that's a feature for which it can, advance better in areas where there is a lacuna or there is a shortcoming. So therefore, my personal belief is it isn't as bad, and we always, as lawyers, we talk about gender neutral laws. Where we find a lady perhaps perceptibly or appears to be at wrong. And that's what the legal system is moving towards. So I guess on this happy note that the status of women isn't that bad as you might believe, and you can take it. I come from an ecosystem which is looking at it in day in and day out. So I would say that's the best way to look.
More that comes into my mind. I mean, if there could be a systemic change, is about women at an early age know about the opportunities available. Because a girl from a middle class family honestly has no idea why a girl. I mean, let's talk about
young people.
Gender neutral. I don't think this generation has an understanding of all opportunities possible. I think if there is a way we could get.
We need coaching.
Influence this, right? Because
we need coaching.
See, there are so many aspects of banking. There's so much aspects of technology. There are so many roles like HR, D&I, marketing and communications, right? I don't think our generation has an idea. And because of that, what happens is you get to do your graduation, you get to do your masters, and then your path goes as it goes, right? Even while people know banking, but people don't have an idea of what are the roles in banking, right? Operations, services, relationship, hardcore, trade, finance. Nobody has an idea. So there would be a structured way of guiding this generation. I think we will save a lot of youth time to kind of, for them to figure out their journey themselves.
Not in maybe the best schools or metros, A1 metros, but in tier 2, tier 3, and semi-urban schools, they have in +2 they have vocational training. So what you're talking about, healthcare is a very big industry. So healthcare, marketing, communications, because just technology, computerization, graphics, so many things are happening. So there are these schools, government schools, which are training the children. So they don't just go for a graduation and then, like you said, you don't know your path. You immediately get into a profession which excites you, which gets you an income, and then maybe you can go into some kind of specialization. So things are happening, and just to comment on what Dr. Rao said, yes, I can say for women, we've come a long way, babe, but it's not enough. It's not enough. And I think we still
You have to get better. You have to get the better of women. Men. you have to go and get ahead of them.
I think today's women want to fly in the sky. They don't want to defy.
I like the
Yeah, exactly. So where there is no limit. We just want to fly in the sky with all the ambitions, purpose, dreams, passion, and there is nobody to defy. And we want the sky for everyone. And that's I think that's. So maybe
Yeah.
one point to add over to. I think we can have more exco sponsorship, and that's what we are seeing is helping us. So one of the things which I did it might even help on is open chair sessions. So everybody is not part of my direct leadership team, but the woman talent who was like few levels down me, and she showed a lot of talent, and she showed that she wanted to learn more. So whenever my meeting was not confidential, I used to say that come join my empty meetings, and that really helped her. And few of us are doing that. That's called open chair session, and I think that really helps because they get a lot of exposure. So it's one of the things we really sometimes don't get that much, but exposure, and Linika touched on it. So that's something which we
I just want to have a quick point about the. I think I said it, but I don't know. I get invited for television interviews, and right from the beginning when NDTV was one of the big, it's swarming with women. All journalists are women. Can you believe it? This is one industry that is has about 90% of women working. The media world is all dominated by women, and that's what I've observed.
Correction. Not all women are journalists. All anchors are women. Journalists are still men. If you know the difference.
For the face for the
No, I mean, I agree that all
eye
women.
tonic, what you
You
call
see,
eye
they're
tonic.
anchors.
Oh no.
Eye tonic.
Everything. They did everything.
Eye tonic. by the way.
I just want to add one last point. Lenika mentioned a very, important aspect of how do we get the children or, the youngsters to understand the arena which is open for them. And, it's either sports, education, whatever, corporate, whatever it is. I think, from one of my experiences where I was working for a Europe-based organization, what we used to do as a part of a CSR initiative, we said, okay, it's not always about contributing money. Why don't you contribute your skill? The option was that you could actually coach, and we would identify schools in remote locations, and the option was that you could coach those children. So I think if a CSR or something could be built where the professionals, and I know a lot of companies are doing
That is
this.
happening. A lot is happening.
A lot is
But it's not about money contribution. It's about time contribution.
Yeah, it's
where
happening.
the professionals are
Ready.
coaching. And I know, like
It is
Lenika
happening.
mentioned,
Yeah.
it's happening. But if more and more companies could do that and coach the youngsters, I think we would. That would be our contribution to.
In fact, a lot of corporates, the tech corporates,
Yes.
very closely with the governments.
Absolutely.
Say the urban schools where
Yeah.
actually like Amazon, Intel, they have their programs like for AI.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Even Delhi Online University, Ambedkar. I mean, it's totally tied up with whether it's Mercedes based. Mercedes, they're teaching you, car mechanics or beauty care, aesthetics.
No, a lot
Everything
of
is
that is
industry
yeah,
tied.
absolutely. A lot of I was more thinking of saying, is there a structured way of bringing everything on the table together, right?
Absolutely.
Like today we are saying there is less women in cybersecurity.
Hmm.
Now the question that came into our mind is why do we have less women in cybersecurity? But we have a lot of women in banking. And the skills required for both are pretty much the same, right? Same intellectual, Six Sigma lens, intuition, all of that is pretty much the same. Then why? Why is less? Because a lot of women do not even know that there is a space called cybersecurity.
There's a lot of conditioning about certain jobs.
Yeah.
By and large, women cook most at home compared to men. But most of the chefs
Are men. Man, that's a good point. I always used to say that.
the street,
Yeah.
oh, it's a five-star hotel.
Yeah.
All chefs are men.
But at home, by and large, women cook. So when we were speaking about bringing women more into the boardrooms, I'm just wondering, do women want to really be in the boardroom?
Yeah. Yeah. You absolutely bang on.
Are you happy being where you are, or do you want to go and be on the top? Very few women would be there. So I think the discussion is more about equal opportunities.
Correct.
Give the opportunity.
Correct.
After that, the woman decides whether I want to be there or not. But if we're all saying, I don't want to take the boat, I don't want to take the boat, then don't say no one gave you the boat.
No, it's that also. And in our country, we should be. See, I heard this from a women, right? What do we role model all the time?
Yeah.
Everybody doesn't wants to be run. It's very simple. So people want to also see the role models where they want to be, right? So we should also place the right role models.
I think media plays a very important role here. That
Yeah.
who are your role models? Or what media is projecting as a role model?
Absolutely. So inspiring community stories are very important. I mean, if there is a way we could do that, right? Because each one gets inspired, right? So when you hear a story of somebody who's come back after a career break, and right, there is a format to it. So many other women kind of read it
We can do
and want to learn from it, right? For example, I went and moving from the women agenda, I went to Starbucks the other day to get a cup of coffee for myself. And there was this person standing on the counter. The person was deaf and dumb. And when I was communicating, I wasn't remembering all the time, right? That he cannot hear me. So he said, so he gave me a notepad to write. I wrote. And the person then went on the dashboard and confirmed the order. And then he said payment. I said, again, I forgot. So he says, how do you want to, he said payment. So I said, UPI, I'll do Paytm. It was in my mind. But he again wrote back on the notepad and said it was a flawless experience. Absolutely flawless experience. And when I put it on LinkedIn to say, I was quite happy. Yeah. And there's somebody who asked me, so what did they use? Did they have a braille on the menu? What inclusion? I said, it was very simple.
He was not blind.
It was nothing. He just had a notepad as an assistive technology. You need not have something fancy all the time, right? It was very simple. And the person was with so much of smile that we got delayed. I had to pick up my stuff from Modern Bazaar. The guy kept waiting there. I just forgot everything. I said, let me finish my LinkedIn post before I leave from here. And I'm not a very social person. Not that I put everything on LinkedIn. But I was so impressed with changing India, right? Things are changing. Absolutely changing.
There's much more acceptance.
I thoroughly enjoyed this discussion. We are just moving away towards the end of the discussion, and this is not planned. The rapid fire round. Something which I enjoy doing.
Steak.
Coffee.
What is that?
Coffee at Starbucks.
So I'm going to ask one question to all of you, and rapid fire means rapid fire. You have to be really very quick. Okay? I'm going to, ask each one of you one category in that particular, women in that particular category, and then you have to share your views on that. Okay? So what comes to your mind when you think of women in dash, and then you have to share your views. Okay? Anything that just first comes to your mind, and you have to be very short. Okay? Oh yeah. So that you're not buying time and trying to understand the question. So I've already made the question very clear. Okay? So we start with Aparna. Women in business.
Kiran Mazumdar.
Okay. Disabled community in business.
So I have a very close friend who's disabled and she's a bread earner of the family and she's my role model.
Transgenders in business.
I'm not able to read. But again, I have a friend who was considered she and then he got operation and he's considered he and we are supporting it.
You can share anything that comes to your mind. Okay, so now Charu. Women in daily wages.
I'm just unable to answer this because what am I supposed to say?
Anything that comes to your mind. Policy, people, experience. Women in daily wages. Transgenders in daily wages.
Insecurity of job tenure.
Okay. Disabled community in daily wages.
Everything is relating to daily wages.
We're talking about 3 different communities.
Disability in daily
Can't think of any. We don't have much.
We do.
Many people.
We have, because there's a quota for in government jobs in every, but it's not related to daily wages. It's for regular employment through the examination process. I'm not getting the hamper.
Mr. Rao.
Definitely.
Women in politics.
Oh, swell. They are on top of the. Yeah.
Transgenders in politics.
Well, not much presence, but they can. They should be encouraged.
Disabled community in politics.
Yes, there are persons. There was I knew Mr. Jaipal Reddy, who was disabled from this thing. He was a very, very successful politician, and there are those who choose to be there are there. It's not as if it's a taboo or it's a ban or any of those things. There.
Priyanka. Women in army.
Women in army, I think role models, and but yes, there's lots that can happen there as well.
And I'll not ask the other two, but your views, because the rules don't allow transgenders and disabled community to be in the army. But what are your views, if at all?
In the army, I think we have to look at people rather than gender.
Non-combat jobs.
There is enough and more scope to do. The intent has to be there on both the sides. It's not about an institution, it is about the person as well. So, I mean.
Thank you. Lenika. Women in corporate.
I just want to correct you. The differently abled in
Yes.
the armed forces, they're taken.
They're taken?
They are there.
Oh,
taken
I
in
was not
different-
aware of this.
Yeah, I mean, somebody.
Administrative posts.
Administrative post. not-
Administrative
yeah.
posts, there are, yeah.
Women in corporate, lots that I can answer here. High emotional question, assertive, and I get appealed and inspired.
Transgenders in corporate.
Lots,
Disabled community in corporate.
lots.
There are many.
Anyway,
Yeah.
many. Even transgenders in business, there are a lot of people who are running and supporting other transgenders getting work. So there is Outcast Collective, there is this kidney community. I don't know how many of you know, but the kidney water is prepared by this community. Then there's Pride Circle, which we all know. So a lot of these are encouraging, a lot.
Thank you.
Yes.
Gets the hamper. I could
I think I would give it to Mr. Rao.
See, this is our mindset, you know.
He was very quick. He was very quick.
He gets to take
It
it.
was a rapid fire round.
Because
so he was very quick.
I supported you.
Then
guys.
I answered
Oh,
all questions.
how can there be a dispute on this now? She is the.
I thought you'd ask
They used to say
Yeah.
the quiz master
Something exciting.
in one of the this things they used to keep repeating the quiz master's decision is final.
Yeah. I think rapid fire.
So I have given you an argument that the quiz master's decision is final.
And
So,
why are we even doing this with him now? I know he will win.
if I get it, I will share it with you. Yeah. Okay. That's
get it.
that's
I'll
a
make
deal.
conditions.
Only thing is I must get it, but it's all yours right after.
Okay. On this note, I think we are towards the end of this discussion. I hand over the mic to Anupama.
Anupama is our Director of Partnerships, is India G100 Advice House. Thank you everyone. It was such an enriching, interesting panel discussion. We resonated with a lot of thoughts and viewpoints. In fact, there's a lot of learning and unlearning here on the platform. And I would say that they like you all mentioned that a behavioral or the mindset change is very important as it happens on the education, which is that is where you really need those the reaching out to kids and making that mindset change. And I'm seeing that change happening because I saw that's what you experience with your kids as well. You see them, their mindset is very different from ours. They are, their thought process is absolutely different. Yesterday, in fact, I was hearing them talking, and the moment you say something which is, it's quite racist.
Yeah.
This is, and
They're very woke.
very, very positive, generation which was coming up. Right. Yeah, they correct you. So yes, I see that change happening, and thank you very much. It was a wonderful, wonderful session, and I would like to thank each one of you, Linika and Priyanka, Kumar, Venkatesh, Dr. Charu, and thank you